Good morning, everyone. It's great to see people out here in person. For a lot of you, I haven't seen you in a very long time, so it's fantastic to have everyone here, and fantastic to have the government here and the Honourable Jane McKenna. Thank you for joining us today. I also want to introduce and thank MPP Skelly for coming today and being with us. Nicole Bonney is from OACAS, and it's great to see you and to have you here for this fantastic announcement. I also want to just welcome our distinguished guests, all of you. It's wonderful to have you all here, and I look forward to sharing this day with you. I want to start us off today with our land acknowledgement. The Children's Aid Society of Hamilton acknowledges our presence on ancestral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee Confederacy land as determined by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The intent of this wampum treaty is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships and local Indigenous communities, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Six Nations of the Grand River. On this land, we're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile our history in child welfare and relations with Indigenous peoples. We are especially mindful of the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action to redress the legacy of child welfare on Indigenous families and communities. We acknowledge that today Hamilton is the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this community on their territory. Hamilton is home to many Black and racialized families who we support and who enhance our community on a day-to-day basis. Anti-Black racism is an important issue within our community and across the province. Black and racialized children and families are overrepresented in the child welfare field, including at our agency. At Hamilton CAS, we're working with OACAS and the province to support the One Vision, One Voice framework, which outlines community recommendations for change, specifically changes that can happen at children's aid societies. I'm proud to share that at Hamilton CAS, we're committed to these changes and have been working together with a partner agency called Empowerment Squared to engage and implement strategies to support equitable service within the Black community. In 2019, our organization started collaborating on how we could work together to develop and provide culturally appropriate services to support equitable outcomes for Black, racialized, and newcomer families in Hamilton. We held interactive community consultations to hear directly with families. The feedback was an essential step to moving our work forward and informed the need for a collaborative and integrated framework to partner agencies. Based on this feedback, we worked together to develop programs and systems that are directly linked to the One Vision, One Voice framework. Highlights include the creation of a specialized newcomer and racialized team at Hamilton CAS, an at-home safety course to support teaching youth about alternative caring arrangements for children in their family and community, programs to help marginalized groups better understand the role of CAS, and a referral system that allows for us to support Black and racialized families with early help and support. Our two organizations are now co-locating, which will continue to foster this partnership that benefits and enhances service to our Black and racialized communities and follows the principles of the One Vision, One Voice framework. The most exciting thing that we want to share with you today is that we are starting to hear feedback from the families that we serve. They have shared that they are becoming more comfortable with reaching out to work with Hamilton CAS in a proactive way and are less fearful of the stigma that can be associated with child welfare. The One Vision, One Voice framework continues to provide us with an opportunity to adjust our practices, engage communities, and reinvest in a system that ensures Black children, youth, and families in our community and in care have access to the services that will support, promote, and enhance their overall health and well-being. Thank you again for coming to Hamilton CAS today to make this very important announcement. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Honourable Jane McKenna.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and it is always a pleasure to be with my good friend, MPP Donna Skelly. Thank you, Hamilton, CAS, and Brian for hosting us today and your hospitality. I also want to recognize Nicole Bonney and the OACAS on the work that you're doing to improve the lives of our children and youth in care. Thank you for all that you do every day to make a meaningful difference in the lives of these kids. Specifically, we know that Black children and youth in Ontario are overrepresented in the child welfare system and are experiencing disproportionately negative experiences in life outcomes as a result of numerous systemic and structural barriers. Our government is committed to continue working together with you to remove these barriers to help Black children and youth achieve their full potential. Important work being done by our children welfare sector is giving them the supports they need to receive equitable care. This will lead to better long-term outcomes in their health, successes at school, and personal relationships, and brighter futures for Black children, youth, and their families. Our government has no tolerance for racism or discrimination of any kind. We believe all children and youth have a right to receive dedicated, targeted supports to meet their distinct needs and respond to their cultures and identities. And that's what today's announcement and investment is about. These programs are critical in our work to support and build up communities in Ontario. This includes strengthening investments designed by and for Black communities that build on the child welfare redesign announced in July last year. One of these incredible programs is One Vision, One Voice. I'm happy to say that our government will be investing $800,000 annually in this community-led project with a focus on anti-Black racism. As many of you know, One Vision, One Voice supports the delivery of culturally appropriate services for Black and African Canadian children, youth, and families involved with the child welfare system. We're very happy to announce that the funding for One Vision, One Voice will now be an annual, ongoing investment to make it a permanent program. We are doing this because One Vision, One Voice has already achieved some very significant milestones. Through the leadership of Nicole Bonney and Keisha Fassi, who is the program manager, One Vision, One Voice has also developed an anti-Black racism needs assessment. This will determine the capacity and readiness of children's aid societies to implement various practices to better serve Black and African Canadian children, youth, and their families, as well as an evolution approach to monitor the impact of changes. Our government is also proud to support One Vision, One Voice because it really highlights what child welfare redesign is aiming to do. We want a system that is a community-based, high quality, and keeps more families together. A system that provides supports that are responsive to the needs of children and families. This means we must do more to provide culturally appropriate services and address biases that might exist in the system to ensure an equitable and positive outcome for all children, youth, and families that interact with children's aid societies. We are working to increase opportunities for family and community well-being, prevent crisis before they occur, improve stability for children, and offer the quality of care, culturally relevant supports that African Canadian and Black children, youth, and their families need to succeed and thrive. Thank you so much. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today, and I'm going to pass it over to my good friend, MPP Donna Skelly, to say a few words.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you all for coming out today. And when they mentioned that it was going to be outside, this is really spectacular. It's quite pretty, and it's in the shade, which is lovely because we've been doing a number of events in very warm weather over the course of the summer. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to join my colleague, the Associate Minister, for this announcement, which will strengthen our community and work to address the inequities experienced by Black and African Canadian youth that prevent them from reaching their full potential. Change takes time, but change is underway. I know that because the Government of Ontario recognizes the impact systemic anti-Black racism and discrimination has had on the lives of Black and African Canadian communities across the province and beyond. And that is why Ontario's 2020 budget doubled the funding for the Black Youth Action Plan by investing an additional $60 million over 3 years. This investment, it's very critical. This investment will build on the success of the plan by renewing existing programs that provide essential supports to more than 10,000 Black children, youth, and families from over 70 community organizations across Ontario. And it will also be used to launch a set of new economic empowerment programs that help Black youth build their careers and achieve their financial goals. Our government is committed to helping Black children and youth reach their full potential by addressing anti-Black racism, removing systemic and structural barriers, and giving them the tools they need to succeed. Today's investment in One Vision, One Voice is another critical step towards this goal. This organization is dedicated to clearing a path forward for Black and African Canadian youth so that they can succeed. They recognized early on how critical it is to deliver culturally appropriate services for Black and African Canadian children, youth, and families involved with the child welfare system. And that is what makes One Vision, One Voice a great partner in our government's redesign of the child welfare system. We call on the expertise of this organization to help us in tearing down barriers and rooting out biases to create a truly equitable child welfare system. We are pleased to work with One Vision, One Voice in doing exactly that. The results will be better outcomes for Black and African Canadian children, youth, and families in the child welfare system and a stronger community overall. Congratulations, and thanks once again to One Vision, One Voice for all of the fabulous work that you have done and for the achievement that lies ahead. Thank you, everyone, and I would now like to invite Nicole Bonney from the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Society to say a few words.
Thank you so much, everyone, and good morning. It's such a pleasure, as my pages try to fly away from me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I want to thank you, Minister McKenna, for your kind remarks, and it's truly an honor to be here today. And it's such a great opportunity to be away from the computer, from Zoom, right? Like to actually see people face to face, got a few hugs in. So what a great start to this day. Really thank you, Brian Schoen, the Executive Director for Hamilton CAS. What a great organization, great leadership. Thank you so much for your hospitality and for extending your lovely, lovely establishment for this announcement today. Couldn't picture a perfect situation and setup for this. So I want to express my gratitude not only to Minister McKenna for your kind words, but MPP Donna Skelly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating the community. It's not just a celebration of African Canadians, but we think of the fact that it's a celebration of our entire community when we look at closing those disparities and disproportionalities that exist. And for those of you who I have not met, it's such a pleasure. I'm the CEO for the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, and we host and have the program of One Vision, One Voice. We have the pleasure and honor of having that program. And I'm also joined here by a fabulous team, the team that really makes it happen behind the scenes when we look at not only the One Vision, One Voice program, but all of our equity work, our service work across the province in terms of how we support children's aid societies, 51 children's aid societies that are members for us at the OACAS. So I'm joined here today by Iona, by Keisha, and by Kristen. Thank you for taking the time to be here for this important announcement. And most of all, I really want to thank you for your hard work. I want to thank you for your dedication. I want to thank you for your commitment. These women work behind the scenes in such a powerful way in terms of, it's only 3, but they move an entire province in terms of their amazing work. And I really want to verbally thank you and appreciate you. And we know that, it's been mentioned a couple times today in terms of the overrepresentation of Black children who are in care. It's mentioned a few times today in terms of the funding that will be the $800,000 that we are so grateful for will be going towards increased efforts to strategically look at the critical issues that are happening across our province that are affecting Black communities. And I also want to take the time, as we're talking about amazing work happening across our province, to recognize the ED Bracco, who's here from Catholic, Hamilton Catholic CAS, and the Director of Equity and Service, Marlene, who's also here as well. Thank you so much for your commitment. Thank you for your work. Thank you for all that you do. And thank you to our HR colleague who's also here too. So really it really is so important in terms of acknowledging folks, because it's a team effort. There is no one organization that could move this work, that we move it as a collective. And so my deep appreciation to all the CASs who work really hard in this area. But when we look at the funding, when we look at how the work will be moved going forward, we know that we have heard different areas of feedback from Black staff. We've heard feedback from Black youth, where we look at the fact that we know that the way in which the system is set up right now, that white supremacy exists. It's systemic. It's within everything that we do in terms of the work of how racism is embedded in our tools, in our policies, in our practices. And so really it will be a constant effort to target where this funding will go towards targeted change and addressing and closing those gaps that we've heard for many, many, many years, since the 70s, about the impact of racism within children's aid societies, within our system. And we know that it's not just a children's aid society problem. This is a societal issue. It's embedded in every system. And we are so thankful that the government, that the ministry recognizes that it's time for change, and not just change for 1 year, for 2 years, but the ongoing persistent change and the targeting of resources in order to have that change happen. So thank you for recognizing that. Thank you for responding to the voices of community. Thank you to responding to the voices of youth and young people across our province. And I also want to recognize that this is not just the hard work of children's aid societies across our province, but it's also the hard work of community organizations, that we have to work in partnerships. We have to work differently with organizations in our community. No longer can we say that children's aid societies can solve every problem, that we know that our children belong in the community, that communities need strong families, and that we need to rely and hear the voices of community members and community organizations. And so I just want to appreciate all of the African Canadian led organizations who are working alongside us, who are in the trenches doing the heavy lift, recognizing and hearing voices of the families and bringing that back as feedback to us and helping us to action the work of One Vision, One Voice. Thank you to partners who work alongside with us and who are here today as well. And so the aim and goal is equity, and that we want to be able to see equitable outcomes, not only for African Canadians, youth where there are disparities, but we also want to see equitable outcomes, especially for First Nation, Inuit, Métis young people who have large amounts of disparities and disproportionalities within our province as well. And we need to continue to look at dismantling colonial structures to address that. We need to continue to look at LGBTQS2+ youth and the experiences that they have, the disparities that they are experiencing experience, and how we continue to target resources and funding in these critical areas as well. And so we know that there's much work to be done, but we are thankful that we certainly have goodwill and good effort and resources to target the problems, and that we're looking at this intersectionally and moving together in one vision and in one voice. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you again to the ministry for this investment.
I'd just like to say, just before we take any questions, that I had received this portfolio a few weeks ago, and one of my first calls was to Nicole. And I really do believe this, that, we all have jobs, but it's the passion and compassion that gets us up through the day. And talking to you, I had goosebumps half the time when I was talking to you. The passion and compassion that all of you experience here today, because the youth and our children are our next generation, and with people behind you, pushing along, the successes are going to be phenomenal. I say to my kids all the time, when you work alone, you make history. When you work together, when you work alone, you make progress. When you work together, you make history. And that's what you're doing here. And I'm so thrilled to be here today. So thank you so much. Any questions? No, it's annualized.
And then that $80,000, does that come from that $60 million investment, or does it come from somewhere else?
I'm pretty sure it came from that investment, but I'll double check that if I'm wrong on that with you. Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the day, and thank you so much for letting us be here, a part of your day today. Thank you.